Okay. Snap, crackle, pop. Today's vlog is the vlog for May 24th. And I woke up this morning to find that I had a little surprise waiting for me. The Bloodstained Ritual of the Night a backing bonus, I guess. It's not a pre-order because the game was kickstarted. Um, and I backed it. One of the tiers that got met was a 8-bit prequel style game. So let me just give a little bit of background. I'm sure I've said some of this before, but it bears repeating. The top two favorite games of all time, my top two favorite games of all time, are Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Super Metroid was a Super Nintendo game made by Nintendo, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night was a PlayStation game published by Konami and directed by Koji Igarashi, I believe is his name. I might be getting his first name wrong. He goes by Iga a lot of the time in online circles and amongst his friends. And he's quite the character. He's one of those slightly eccentric director, producer style people. The most famous, of course, being Hideo Kojima, but Mr. Miyamoto from Nintendo has also got a reputation for being a little bit out there. And the nutball who created the Dead or Alive franchise, whose name I can't remember, is also sees himself as sort of a rock star, but the rest of the world might have trouble doing that. I believe he was fired for sexual harassment. But anyway, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about Iga. Symphony of the Night was, quite simply put, one of the best 2D games ever made, period. And that's because it used the two-dimensional art style with a little bit of three-dimensional stuff thrown in to keep things interesting in not necessarily a new way, but a way that accentuated what you can do with two-dimensional animation in a game. It was highly detailed. It's among the most detailed games of all time. There's a section where you work your way to an outer wall and you can see mice running in and out of the holes in the walls. And these mice aren't simply, a animation that just plays on a loop, like they come out of a hole, run across, go into the other hole, and just, as if they're doing a laps around the walls in the castle. They come out and then they have sort of random patterns. So they might run around, they'll stop, they'll look around, they'll sniff, they'll move around again, look around, and then go back in their hole. And it makes that area feel very alive. There's also famously a nest with some seabirds in it if you go to the bottom of the outer rampart area. And in that area with the nesting gulls or seabirds or whatever they are, there's also a telescope. And if you look through it, depending on what the time is set to on your PlayStation internal clock, different images will play as if you were looking through a telescope glass. It's just the tip of the iceberg. The entire game is a masterwork of visual two-dimensional art. And I notice things even today, 20 years later, that I didn't notice the first 200 times I played that game. I have gotten 200% completion. I've actually gotten more than 200% completion because there are some bugs that allow you to get over 200% of the map uncovered, which is how it tracks, the percentage of the game you've completed. I've found every item in the game. Obviously, I've beaten every boss, every enemy. I've filled out the entire glossary, including a couple monsters that are very difficult to get because at least one of them is only summoned by one boss. So you have to wait until the boss has summoned that enemy to kill it, to add it to your bestiary, I guess would be the best way of calling it. So, I love this game, and I love the way it plays. I love how replayable it is. I even love the cheesy voice acting in the original. Die, monster! You don't belong in this world! All that stuff. I could quote that too. Bloodstained was created by Iga because he basically couldn't make the game he wanted to make at Konami anymore. Konami has a sense about it of being run by people who are out of touch with modern gaming, and they make most of their money these days, I believe, on Yu-Gi-Oh! And pachinko machines and pachinko parlors all over Asia. So their importance to the gaming industry vis-a-vis the Metal Gear series and the Castlevania series is sort of becoming null and void. The Silent Hill franchise has already been basically put down. Silent Hills has been taken by Hideo Kojima and turned into a game called Death Stranding, which should have some new information revealed this year at E3. I don't know if it's going to be as scary as PT, which was the playable teaser created to promote the game, which was later taken off of PlayStation Network. But this 2D 8-bit prequel game is called Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. And that's a very important title for a couple of reasons. One is that there was a Game Boy Castlevania game called Castlevania Circle of the Moon. But more importantly, there was an old 8-bit NES game called Castlevania 3 Curse of Dracula. So, Curse of Dracula, Circle of the Moon, Curse of the Moon. So, it's very much a Castlevania game. In fact, it's as hard as a Castlevania game. The thing that sort of struck me is that the boss enemies are these huge pieces of multiple sprites chained together to create these large images that animate and have very interesting attacks. And it sort of reminds me of Shovel Knight, which is another game that was done in the 8-bit style, but was made much later than the heyday of the NES, which is what these games are designed to look like. So, I'm sorry, I'm a little stuffed up. My nose is all itchy. It must be pollen in the air or something. But I got that and I played it for a little while, and then I got into. So let me break it down. My two favorite games of all time are Super Metroid, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I can't pick one and put it above the other. They both occupy very much the same place in my mind. They're better at different things, and they're enjoyable for different reasons, but I enjoy them both equally. Number 3 would probably be The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, which is a game I've spent at least 1,000 hours on, not just playing, but also modding. Windows. Something you should do right now, even if you're in the middle of recording something. Where was I? Okay, Skyrim is number 3. I've played it to death. Number 4, I'm probably going to have to go with World of Warcraft. It was the first MMO that I really, really got into, and I still play it. I played it last week. I'll probably be playing it tomorrow. And no game I think I've played as much as that game, and even though I don't play it with as much fervor or passion as I once did, its effect on me as a person cannot be overstated. So it gets 4th place. So what's 5th place? What's the 5th game in my top 5 games? It's called Terraria, and a lot of people think of it as the 2D Minecraft, but it's sort of a different beast. It is a game where you can build, and in fact you're encouraged to build little structures in order to progress through the game, But Minecraft is much better at being a set of building blocks to make all sorts of crazy contraptions in a 3D environment. Minecraft is much, or excuse me, Terraria is much more of a game in that there is progression. You start off with nothing, and you have to entice NPCs to come and live in your world by building structures that suit them. Although that's a very simple thing. You have to basically have a table, a chair, lights, and walls, and that's it. Um, but you can build crazy interesting things, and I've built some pretty interesting stuff myself. But you're also trying to beat bosses, and as you explore the world, you'll find materials that you can use to make better weapons and equipment. Sound familiar? So it activates that sort of look for stuff, get stuff, improve your player avatar. This allows you to do more things, which gets you access to different materials, which allows you to build new stuff, which allows you to do new things, etc. So when you start off, you have a copper short sword, a pickaxe, and an axe for cutting down trees. So it should probably come as some surprise that after you get far enough into the game, you'll end up with a pair of wings, and you'll be wielding weapons that can breathe fire or shoot laser beams, and wearing armor that glows in the dark or allows you to capture the essence of enemies to heal yourself, or all sorts of amazing, crazy stuff. And the only problem with this is that when I transferred to my new computer in November last year, I lost everything in Terraria, which was about 6 or 7 years worth of buildings, cities, tree forts, cities in trees, castles, and all sorts of stuff. Not to mention some very powerful characters. But playing that Castlevania Bloodstained game, I shouldn't call it Castlevania, it's not Castlevania, it's Bloodstained. Playing that today sort of reminded me how much I love 2D games just in general. It's worth noting that the 3 of the 5 games on my top 5 games are 2D. 2D. So yeah, I booted it up just to see if I lost everything, and I did. And then I got started again, and I just love playing that game. It's ridiculous. Well over my 10-minute limit now. So I'm going to go clear my nostrils out, I guess. I really wish I knew why that was happening. And I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.